And we're live. It is Thursday, the 20th day of November, the year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m., and I have an important announcement to make. I have been abandoned by all of my co-hosts. It is a terrible thing. Sometimes you wake up in the morning and you send a note to all your co-hosts, and some of them have the temerity to be in other time zones. I'm not, talking about any individual here, Holly Berkley Fletcher, but, they have the discourtesy to be waking up in different time zones and maybe not even be awake yet. And some of them, and I don't mean to name names, Mike Feinberg, are racked with imposter syndrome and are busy writing, and they have new babies, and they're tied up. And some of them, and I don't mean to name names, Alicia Wanless, are on deadline for other things. And then some of them, I don't mean to name names, Nastya and Minna are just, overseas and doing their jobs and stuff like that. And and the result is, that we are that you end up alone, and it happens every now and then that you collect around yourself the co-hosts for which you would pray, and sometimes they all get together and abandon you en masse. And then you have no choice. There is no choice when this happens but to go on by yourself and start guilting them in public until one of them shows up.
You're such a big baby. I'm not even dressed for this shit. I have a talk I have to give tomorrow. I heard your crap.
And yet it worked. The only question in my mind was whether you would fall for it or whether Feinberg would fall for it.
Let me tell you about this little fable about a boy who cried wolf. One day, nobody's going to show up. Ever again.
You know what? I had a plan for that eventuality.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
To whine about us for an entire hour?
No. The day that I have that problem, truly, first of all, usually a member of the Greek chorus shows up and we end up having a great show. So the joke, usually when I'm doing this, it is more about apparent guilting you than actual guilting you, because I am unafraid of a show by myself. That said, I did have a concept for a show today, which was, it is time for me to change the login for this, the link. I need to change the link for this. We've been using this one since the beginning of the year.
Don't change it today. I gave it to the person for tomorrow.
No, we won't change it today. But one thing I was thinking of doing was just putting out on Blue Sky, if you click this link, you will show up on a live show and do a show called Talk to Strangers. That was just whoever from Blue Sky clicked on the link. And,
Sounds like
it was going to be the talk. Well, it's a little bit chat roulette. It's a little bit Omegle, except there would be content moderation, i.e. me. But, like an hour of talking to strangers seemed like it could happen. It could be a thing. Anyway, welcome to the show, Alicia Wanless, hostage to my guilt. I kind of figured you'd fall for it.
Actually, I wouldn't
Folks,
have, but stupid Substack sent a push notification, and then I must have clicked something, and there you were in my headphones whining about Feinberg, and I knew what was coming.
all right. So, yes, welcome to those who are watching on Substack Live. I don't usually broadcast to Substack Live because this is the joining live, being part of the actual experience of Dogshirt TV is reserved for those who pay to subscribe. Everybody else gets to watch it in retrospect, but every now and then I figure for advertising purposes to show people the experience that they are missing. I do one on Substack Live, and then people, even you, Alicia Wanless, get an alert.
To be clear, I have a
That
subscription.
it is happening. Yeah, right.
I bought into
All
your
right.
madness entirely.
Yeah. Um, Anyway, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping. It's gonna be a great fucking day. And you are watching Dogshirt TV, and it is a revolution in morning television. And one of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that sometimes I start the show with a challenge to myself, which is how long do I have to talk smack about my co-hosts before one of them shows up to defend herself? And the answer in this case was 3.5 minutes.
If my talk sucks tomorrow,
And
it's your fault.
another one of the revolutionary features, because as I say, there are many, is that every now and then I have a birthday. And the birthday invariably falls on Guy Fawkes Day. And my wife buys me a very cool present, which is a mid 19th century print of Guy Fawkes being seized by agents of the crown as he is on his way to blow up the British Parliament. And I get it framed, and I have not yet hung it in back of me, but that is its destiny. And it will not be interpretable what it is, but you, viewers of this particular show, will always know that the image that hangs in back of me is, in fact, when I'm not in the hammock studio, that is. The image that hangs in back of me is, in fact, of Guy Fawkes on November 5th being seized in the really the only holiday that celebrates the failures of non-state actors to take down the central organs of state power. Hello, Holly Berkley Fletcher, who had the temerity to wake up in a different time zone.
Well, I'm at the airport, so I had to be up anyway. So, and I'm here with, can I put you on camera? Sure. Greek chorus member Melissa.
Whoa.
Oh, that's
Yes.
cool.
We did the Principals First dinner last night, and a Dogshirt TV person came just to see me. She said, "I'm not a Mormon. I've never been a Republican. I came for you."
Wow.
I was like really flattered. So,
and so maybe this is a good time for Melissa to introduce herself.
well, she's not, she doesn't have, do you want an earbud? She's not earbudded. I'd have to give her my earbud.
Oh,
Here, sorry about the earwax.
Oh.
this is the first time we have ever had earwax discussion on
You
Dogshirt
can't hear?
TV, but it
No.
won't be the last, I'm sure.
You can't hear? Okay.
Hello, Melissa. Um, uh, so why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about Principles First and what you are doing there?
So,
Ooh, we can't hear you.
with I'll do this. Here, take both of them.
Now
Where's the
more
microphone
earwax.
though, Holly? Is it on the phone or is it on the earbuds?
Oh, we're still there. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, loud
Okay.
and clear.
So it started out in 2019 as a lot of disaffected center right types, and it literally was 5 people in an Applebee's. And we've grown. We have teams or chapters in 24 states now. We have an annual summit. Last year we had about 1,200 people who attended. We're having another one next year in February, and we're hoping to have about 2,000 people. Um,
And
so
if I remember right, Enrique Tarrio and a bunch of recently pardoned Proud Boys crashed your summit last year.
yes, they did, and I was right in the middle of that scrum. And he is little petty little man as you would expect.
Yeah. Um,
He
uh,
he he came in with like 5 guys around him. They all had little body worn cameras. Ivan Raiklin, uh, he was there. He brought like a 10-year-old kid with him. It was just ridiculous. Anyway, they were trying to provoke Mike Fanone and Harry Dunn and those guys. I'm sure they were just trying to get a viral moment. Fortunately, they did not. And then the day after that, we actually had a bomb threat called in, and we had
that's
to
right.
evacuate. John Bolton was actually on the stage for a talk, and an email came in with a threat, and it was directed at him. Um, so of course he had his own security and everything, so he left. But everybody, it was actually I was really proud of the attendees' response to it. Everybody just calmly exited like they were told. Everybody stood around for a few minutes. When it was cleared, everybody went back in, and it was very much an attitude of defiance. We're not. You can do what you want, but you're not messing with this, and we're gonna just carry on. So anyway, we had our dinner last night. It was the first one we'd had in Salt Lake City. Um, we were doing our religious liberty, so I asked Holly if she would participate, and of course she brought the house down.
As she is wont to do. So,
Yes.
folks, if people want to find out more about Principles First or get involved, what is your role in Principles First, by the way?
So I'm the chair, the events committee chair. Right now, I'm hopefully coming on as staff soon. Um, but we
Oh, I
are,
thought that had already happened.
well, okay, it stays in the Greek chorus. I'm officially the director of operations, but that's not official yet.
I see. So
I very
there is one
inelegantly
other
tried to
really
walk that line.
important thing that you need to know about Melissa people. I mean, there are many other important things about, but for present purposes, there is one other thing that you really need to know, which is Melissa is the person who found and sent me the Born to Dilly Dally, Forced to Fight Fascism shirt that has often appeared on this show.
We
Melissa,
need to get we need to get one big enough for the frog costume. I need to find like a
it's true.
4X
I
for
mean,
it.
actually, if we could get one that was done up to be wearable on
Yeah.
top of that would be rip-roaringly great. So here's the question, Melissa. If people want to find out more about Principles First and get involved in Principles First, how do they do that?
So you can reach us online, and it is at Principles First. First is spelled out, .us. It has, background on the organization. It lists our 15 principles. The first being, truth and integrity, character matter, non-negotiable. Um, and it's got all of our events. It has past events. If anybody's interested in the summit coming up in 2026, you can see the 2025 summit. We have lots of videos and clips from that. It's a great community of people.
It's a lovely community, and I will tell you a
Mhm.
funny story about the community of people around Principles First. I was invited to speak at the first Principles First summit. I, by the way, have not been invited back, which I attribute to the lackluster performance I must have given. But
Were you guilting
I was
people?
invited. Yeah, that's the theme of this show. Um, but I found myself on this panel sitting next to a gentleman with who I think it's fair to say we eyed each other with a little bit of mutual suspicion. His name is Greg Nunciata, and let's just say we come from different you know, Greg is a strongly pro-life conservative lawyer who is, you know, uh, I wouldn't say he and I have ever tangled in the previous lives, but I think he probably viewed me as you know a left radical, and I viewed him as a uh, the the sort of archetype of social conservatism that I don't have a whole lot of truck with. But actually, I think that's an unfair description of both of us. We both assumed that that's how the other was looking at us, but we were actually looking at each other in like kind of cool that I'm sitting next to Ben Wittes or Greg Nunciata at this. And if you listen to Greg's comments, you will find that he's I don't know, sort of testing me a few times, like, this may really offend Ben, but blah, blah, blah. And I found that I didn't disagree with a single thing that he said at that panel, and he didn't disagree with a single thing I said at the panel, and we ended up warm acquaintances that day, and have been good friends ever since. And Greg now runs the Society for the Rule of Law, which is the sort of Federalist Society alternative for people who actually take rule of law seriously that George Conway and company founded. And so this is a good example of the sort of community building of democracy communities that happens at Principles First, and I commend you all to it. And that is your visit for the day from an organizational leader who Holly happens to be walking through an airport with. And if you are watching this on Substack Live and have never seen Dogshirt TV before, that is the sort of thing that happens all the time on Dogshirt TV. We just kind of randomly grab people and talk to them about democracy. Melissa, you are a great American, and it is great to see your face.
Thank you. It's good to see you too. And I'm going to do a quick plug. Ben is appearing at our principal's first dinner in San Francisco. So we're very happy about that.
I will be there. That will be on December 4th. And if
Fourth.
you
Yep.
are in the Bay Area, you should join as well.
I'm going to hand this back to Holly now. It's good to see
All
you.
right. So,
Bye.
having guilted Alicia Wanless into appearing on the show this morning, which she really didn't have time to do because she's preparing a speech for tomorrow.
You got Holly, so I can leave now.
You could, but before you do, I'm going to ask you, what is who are you speaking to? What's the speech about? What are we collectively preventing you from being prepared for tomorrow?
I don't know if I want to tell you because then you'll be all judgy and you'll be like, well, why don't you already have that done? Haven't you done this a million times already?
Should I tell you the story about Leo Strauss and preparedness for class?
You could do that.
All right. So Bill Galston, my great colleague at the Brookings Institution, was one of the last students of Leo Strauss. And I believe his first year at the University of Chicago grad school was one of Strauss's last years teaching. And Bill, I don't think of Bill as an actual Straussian by any means, but he did study with Leo Strauss, and he tells this very funny story about getting up the gumption as a first-year graduate student to actually go to office hours with the great Leo Strauss. And he goes to office hours, and he says it really was a stressful thing because, and he goes in and he asks his question, and Strauss delivers himself of a, 5 minute 5 paragraph fully composed sentences answer that after which there was no follow-up conversation to be done because the answer was so complete that you know, you had posed the question, he had given you a treatise of an answer, and there were no words left to say. And so Bill said he realized that the only thing left to do was to excuse himself and leave. And so he, in an attempt to be polite, said, well, I suppose I should leave and let you get ready for class. And Strauss smiled Delphically at him and said with his faint German accent, it would be a bit late for that. Um, and that is the vibe I am always going for when I give a speech. That if everything I have done in life has not prepared me for the moment of giving this speech, it would be a bit late for that.
See, yeah, that's how
Um,
I think you're going to
Well,
feel about
Alicia is
this.
always prepared.
I'm not.
No,
I'm
Alicia is always prepared.
I am very
what
seldom
is
prepared.
what is the speech about?
It's about the book.
It's about the book. Um, yeah, okay. And who is it to?
Um, so it is, first of all, it's tomorrow in Montreal, and it's with Obvia, which is a research network that is pretty focused on AI, of all things. They're the International Observatory on the Societal Impacts of AI and Digital Technologies. And
And
all
so this, are you applying the book, the thesis of the book to the AI world?
actually, so what happened was I also had to speak to a bunch of Supreme and Superior Court judges this week because that's normal. And so, first of all, it was an hour and a half long panel. I did not look at how long the session would be. So, that was a test of endurance. This talk in this session is also an hour and a half. And if anybody knows anything about me, I like about a 10 to 15 minute time slot. Anything more than that is a struggle for me to focus. So
Well, and let's refine that point for a minute. Anything longer than that in which Alicia has to be exposed to human beings is it starts to get stressful.
the worst part about the thing on Tuesday was that at some point I just jumped ahead to the third section and the moderator was like, "What are you doing? This isn't supposed to happen yet." And I was like, well, there's no countdown clock. I have no idea how much time we have left. And she's like, we have a lot. And then at the end, I was like, this was an hour and a half. Okay. Anyway, what happened was I had talking points there about information competition as opposed to boring people about information ecology. And then I was like, now I have to redo this entire talk because I think that that's more interesting. So here we are.
All right. Um, and then finally, and before we entirely let you go, um, give us a teaser about tomorrow's show, Alicia. Who's joining us, and what are we talking about?
I'm in sweatpants. I'm going to have to post a link to a podcast that I particularly liked where I'm well put together and I don't look like a slob. Stephen Marsh is coming on, another Canadian who wrote the book
Oh, wow.
The Next Civil War, which I highly recommend. It's a little bleak, but in some ways he outlines how things can't happen. So that's a silver lining. So he'll be joining us.
Excellent. And this is my favorite kind of book conversation that is outside of the Marrow Book Club, which is a book that I have not read but intend to read, and so you get to have and just for the record, people, when I interview or do an interview or participate in an interview with somebody about a book I haven't read, I always lead with, by the way, I haven't read the book yet. I'm going to, but I haven't read the book yet. So when you don't see me do that, that's because I have read the book. I will never advertise that, I did my homework and read the book. But when you see me do an interview, you can assume I've read the book unless I flamboyantly lead with, by the way, guys, I haven't read this book yet, and I always find that authors sort of appreciate it if you actually admit rather than try to fake that you haven't read the book. Um, so we're going to do that. We're going to invite Stephen Marsh to come back and make a fiction recommendation. By the way, I have booked a new guest for the Mara Book Club. We haven't found a date yet, but the estimable Corey Shockey is going to be joining us to discuss her new book about civil military relations, along with an interesting fiction pairing, which I believe is a set of short stories, which she says is the best thing that has been written about military families in recent years. Um, so stand by for an announcement about that. We're still waiting for a fiction pairing to go with Laura Field's book. She's been dilatory about getting back to me on that. I think because there are so few pieces of fiction written about extreme far right intellectuals. But we're waiting on that. And folks, if you have other nominees for people you want to hear from in the new nonfiction department with their fiction pairings, do let me know, and we will get to work booking them. Alicia, do not stay one moment longer out of guilt.
No, I gotta go do this
Uh,
this thing because then I've got a meeting and then we gotta go to Montreal.
stay only if it would be pleasurable.
That's like a guilty thing to say again. Because like I'm leaving because this isn't
Right.
pleasurable.
Um, Andrew, Tim Miller is not too busy to join Dog Shirt TV. Tim Miller is a good friend. I do his show every time he wants or asks me. He will do this show anytime I ask, with one caveat, which is that there's no way he's going to be awake at 7 in the morning Central Time. And so, but the Mara Book Club is a perfect forum for Tim. We could go back to his book. We could find a fiction pairing for it. I've already done several interviews with him about his book, and so, but do not think. Now, would I do a show with Adrian Vermeule? And the answer to that question is hell yeah. Adrian is a freak of nature. He is a subject of Laura Field's book. I know him a little bit. We're not friends, but we have spent a weekend together at the house of a mutual friend. He is among other things, a first-rate administrative law professor, a deeply beloved professor by many.
I'm just going to interrupt you and tell you that you have me for about 5-10 more minutes. So,
All right. We're gonna and then so would I talk to Adrian about Catholic integralism and why he is has become what he has become? Sure. Any day of the week and twice on Tuesdays. And if people want Adrian Vermeule either to come to the show on Dog Shirt TV or to be a Mara Book Club participant, I would happily invite him. I'd be really curious to know what his fiction pairing is. Holly, what is on your mind this morning before you get on a plane?
oh, I was just going to fill in about last night, which was very fun. The keynote person was John Kasich, who I voted for in 2016 in the primary because he was the only one that I thought was palatable at all. And he was very nice. He was very down to earth and very nice. I do not think he's obviously anti-Trump. He endorsed Biden at the convention in 2020, you may recall, but I don't think he's alarmed enough about things. He's pretty like he unfortunately did this shtick that many, sort of establishment Republicans who still want to be Republican do, where it's like, but the Democrats, and it's bad for this. It's just a worse version of what we had before. So that was a little bit frustrating, I think, for most of the attendees. But he was really nice, and very down to earth. And yeah, chatted with him for a while. Gave him a copy of the book. He seemed interested. I don't know. So
Um, I have always thought that John Kasich, but for a weird kind of manic energy and self-absorption. I mean, he talks kind of compulsively um and almost always about himself. Um, uh, but for
that's
that,
every politician, though. Every politician talks only about themselves.
yeah, although he seems like further out on that bell curve than most. But that said, I like the guy. I think he's smart, like very smart. I think he was smart when he was a, budget hawk, member of the Republican head of the budget committee, and like he was always a thoughtful uh, exponent of a certain set of ideas. He was a very good governor of Ohio,
Very
and
pragmatic. Very
very
pragmatic.
very pragmatic. And in a world in which most people's evolutions have been repellent, his evolution has been attractive. And so I have, uh, like, my only problem with John Kasich, honestly, is that he was not more popular than he was as a general election candidate. But he's, I think, a genuinely decent, uh, uh, a fine mind and a decent person. And I, um, I wish he had not faded to almost total obscurity.
Yeah, I mean, he still makes kind of the rounds, I suppose, and I think he has some anyway, he works with various organizations, but yeah, he's a little too optimistic. I mean, I don't know. I'm feeling kind of optimistic lately. I don't mind the optimism that sort of things will be okay, but it's like that what really kind of what I disagree with and what I would have if I'd had a longer conversation, what I would have is like this is no, this is what we're seeing now is like a definite break with the past on both sides. Like this is not like in the realm of where we've been going and like unfortunate aspects of our politics sort of being amplified. It's a definite break. It's a definite threat. And yeah, so I think his optimism. I don't think it's like head in the sand. I just think he's sometimes I find very optimistic people who are like big believers in America um, tend to do this thing where it's like they sort of minimize the danger. And so I would have pressed him on that. The other thing is he's written a book about it's called Heaven Help Us, I think. Anyway, it's basically like how faith communities can be like the solutions to all our problems. And I agree with that to a point, but again, I think a lot of people, including him, bad religion, good religion could solve things, but bad religion is a big part of why we're here. I was talking to him about my parents, and I'm like, you don't get any more devout than my parents, and they're part of the problem. So,
So I also think part of the problem, faith communities can be part of the solution for certain aspects of the problem. But part of the problem is that we have a no meeting of the minds between faith communities and non-faith communities about what virtue is. And that actually strikes me as a relatively novel development, that the visions of virtue are so radically different between faith communities or between some faith
well, or
communities.
within, honestly, in Christianity, American Christianity, again, I feel like I am in a different religion altogether than evangelicals right now. Like, I'm not even of the same religion as they are.
So, I mean, 50 years ago, just to pick a random moment in time, or 100 years ago, um, or 25 years ago, if you went to a bunch of faith communities and a bunch of non-faith communities with the um, question: is it okay for politicians to be, lying sacks of shit? You would get similar answers between faith communities and non-faith communities. Politicians lie, but no, honesty is important, right? And now I think you really actually get really different answers in principle between between particularly the evangelical world, which has developed this extremely instrumental view of truth, and a kind of normative American sense that, actually it's sort of not okay for politicians to lie by default habitually all the time.
I don't
I,
know. There's a lot of there again on the MAGA, on the MAGA movement. It's people of faith and pe people of no faith that are part of that. In fact, one of the sort of, well, excuses, I guess, that good evangelicals mention all the time is like, oh, the evangelicals and they're not really evangelicals, and it's like, no, there are that type that are just. I have a cousin who never goes to church. She is not married to the father of her children, but she's a MAGA, and she considers herself, a very good Christian, and so there is a meeting of the minds, but it's like I just don't think religion right now doesn't seem to be informing those opinions. It's more political tribe that's informing those views of what morality is and what ethics are, and instead of one's faith. I think that's a big part of it. And by the way, that's wrong. That excuse of like, oh, they're not really actually among white evangelicals, the people that go to church the most are most Christian nationalists than those that don't go to church. So there's something in there that is reinforcing um, those tendencies in the actual faith, and yeah.
yeah, and there's something in, but that's kind of what I mean, that there's like, if you go around and you ask normie Democrats, normie Republicans, about, non-religious normies, um, some basic questions, they will have a hard time getting their hands around what's going on in the evangelical circles that you just referred to, as evidenced by the fact that they do. And I don't think that is simply a religious divergence. I think it's a pretty deep cultural divergence about things like truth, lies, virtue, um, and the fact that Donald Trump can make a video about the No Kings protest in which he's flying an airplane and dumping shit on protesters wearing a crown, and very large numbers of people, including religious people, find that energizing and empowering rather than repellent, um, I think is a reflection of that. And you're right that both categories are over inclusive. The normie category includes a lot of religious people, and the MAGA category includes a lot of irreligious people. But uh, it is strikes me as sort of obviously the case that if you go that there is something important changing in the minds of people like your parents about that is connected to their religious movement, that is allowing them to get rid of ideas like virtue in the
See,
political sense.
anyway, this is long. I have to go in a minute. So I actually see a lot of continuity. I don't think they've changed. This actually fits quite well with their dogmatic view of the world and their sort of a lot of their views. It's actually not. I'm disappointed in them, but I'm not actually that surprised if I'm honest. So um, anyway, I'm that's a whole longer conversation. But you know me, like I see deep problems that go back a very long way in evangelicalism that has brought us to where we are, and just generally any religion that is dogmatic and fundamentalist and does not encourage critical thought and does not take a broad view of you know morality in the world is potentially very dangerous in society. So, and I gotta go.
Catch your
So
flight.
thank
Um,
you.
have a safe trip home. Cleo has grabbed a
I was
squeaker
gonna say,
toy.
sound like a baby cry.
Nope, that is Cleo squeezing the squeaker toy.
All
Uh, and uh, and join us tomorrow if you like for the conversation with Stephen Marsh. Uh, all right, folks, this
right,
gives
see ya.
us 19 minutes in which the phones are open, as we used to say in the radio days. And remember that all of Substack is watching today. So, you know, you can leave me hanging here, but that will be deeply embarrassing for the show. So let's put on a good presentation of uh, engagement by the Greek chorus. Um, uh, and for those in the Greek chorus who are in Australia and off to go to bed, have a great night. And we will see you next time. That is a category of at least one, by the way, for those who are not following the chat. Um, all right, folks. I'm just going to sit here quietly until somebody shows up. Hello, Carol.
Hello, I'm messy this morning.
I'm messy this morning too.
Um, I don't know whether it's partly because I was distracted in the chat, but I don't quite follow the virtue in different communities that you were talking about. Politicians lying, I don't think that any faith would go along with that, but the people who claim to follow the faith seem to accept it even though it would conflict with their theory of virtue.
So,
I mean, are
first
we
of all,
talking about theories of virtue or performative?
well, I guess my thought about this is, um, first of all, the whole comparison in the evangelical world of Trump to Cyrus of Persia, um,
About
which,
whom I know nothing.
right, so Cyrus is a very flawed actor. He's not a good guy, but in contemporary evangelical theology, he stands for this idea that sometimes the chosen instrument of God is not himself a beautiful, virtuous person.
Right, which gives them a lot of wiggle room for following him out of the window.
Exactly. Um, and so the first observation that I would make is that this is actually a vehicle for dispensing with virtue, right? If you have somebody whose oath is plainly untrustworthy, who's wholly lacking in what we think of as civic virtue, who's deeply immoral in every way that one can understand a person to be immoral, down to, very plausible allegations of rape from a number of different sources. And by
Including
the
the
way,
15-year-old.
even if you choose to ignore all that stuff, just the other day was yelling at a reporter for the temerity to ask a question of, the murderer sitting next to him, right? So, I mean, this is somebody who is very deeply immoral and unvirtuous. And we have created a theological framework to understand him in which that doesn't matter. That strikes me as a pretty radical step. Um, and I think the broad proposition that as recently as 20 years ago was, with respect to Bill Clinton, um, it was a matter of significant discomfort to the left that Bill, and some people beclowned themselves in how they handled the discomfort, but that Bill Clinton would do the things that he did and then contrive to lie about it, both to a grand jury under oath and arrange for other people to tell lies. Was, nobody made the argument that we could dispense with all civic virtue because he represents us. There were people in the feminist community who said, okay, well, we can we can we don't have a choice but to be represented by him, and therefore, and he's better than the alternatives. But that did not age well, and there aren't a lot of people on the left and in the feminist community who stand by it today, or who think that, that was a good argument for Gloria Steinem to make at the time. And certainly nobody developed a kind of elaborate, we don't believe in virtue anymore because Cyrus of Persia, right? Um, and so I think there was just more like the not that people didn't make excuses for Bill Clinton. They did. They should be ashamed of that. And I'm not going to make excuses for them. But there wasn't a kind of the same kind of elaborate revisiting the premises of everything that we purport to believe. And I think when you have that, um, and by the way, another example of this is the Heritage Foundation, which, has this whole like Project Esther, to go after and rout out, people who may be a little bit too offended by uh, the behavior of the state of Israel, or insufficiently offended by Hamas, to call that anti-Semitism and to rout them out of universities. And um, that this group of people would turn around and, defend Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes, um, is again this sort of sense that we different communities no longer have the same meaning for virtues that we used to, at least in theory, have an agreement about what they were.
I think, though, that there's a couple of things that I would say. One is that the Heritage Foundation split about Fuentes, right? There were people who left.
Be careful. The Heritage Foundation split after Kevin Roberts forced it into the public arena. As long as they were merely tolerating this group of people, there was no split in the Heritage Board. As long as, it was merely a matter of going very aggressively after the left, including for some very marginal questions of anti-Semitism, but being part of an ecosystem that actively tolerated and frankly fed at the trough of some very virulent and overt anti-Semitism. There was no split in the heritage community over
No,
that. The
no.
same people who were,
I
piously
mean, I was just
signing
saying,
letters.
Francis was a bridge too far for some people once it was
Yeah.
out there. That's all.
And so, I mean, I could give you 100 examples of this, Trump's personal behavior being
Oh,
only one.
absolutely.
But this idea that there's no stable understanding between communities of what is okay Jew hatred, um, and that like that. And by the way, on this point, the left is not without guilt too. There is a toleration for the for some awful stuff that is
Anti-Semitism is very flexible.
that formulates around. So I don't mean to, but my point is we use terms that we used to have a rough agreement about their meaning, and we no longer, and virtue is one of them, by the way, but it's not the only one, and we no longer even purport to have a stable cross movement definition and of these terms, and part of that is a divergence of certain religious communities a from the secular norms of the society. But some of it is not. Some of it is a MAGA, non-MAGA thing. Some of it is a left-right thing. Um, Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to say another thing that I think is important when we talk about Clinton versus Trump is that Clinton was Clinton was not a religious figure, right? I mean, the thing about Trump is I mean, even those of us who made excuses for Clinton did not do so because we thought he represented God,
Correct.
right? Trump is acceptable because he is associated with being God's gift for
And all
whatever reason. And what they've done is they've found a lot of ways around using their religious framework of virtue in order to accept Trump as the symbol that God has chosen.
that's right. And I think the that point has a lot of texture and context. Um, Look, you could say that in the left secular world, a certain set of visions of equity and equality are the theology. And so there was a similar effect going on with Clinton, that it was unthinkable that we could let his enemies prevail over him, because then Roe v. Wade would be overturned, which of course turned out to be right. And so you kind of had to defend him. And by the way, I never believed this. I did not vote for Clinton a second time in 1996 because of Paula Jones, and I did not. I opposed his impeachment for very practical, tactical reasons related to the fact that there was no plausible way he would get convicted in the Senate. But I did not have then, and do not have now, an objection in principle to impeaching a president because he uh, engaged in a pattern of gross sexual misconduct and then contrived to lie about it before, and have other people lie about it before various instruments of state. That actually does not trouble me as a constitutional matter or a political matter. And I thought Clinton's impeachment, as it played out, turned out to be a stupid thing that shouldn't have happened. But it's not a matter of principle. It's a matter of cheapening uh, the impeachment process by using it in a fashion that was um, uh, um, that was meant more to be a set of mudslinging than actually was focused on something real. And so um I was I guess the sense in which there is parallelism, right, is that the left felt the need to embrace Clinton or defend Clinton it did not develop a theology around it, because the left doesn't fundamentally speak in religious languages. The right does fundamentally speak in religious language. So when it feels that same urge, we must defend Trump, it creates religious justifications for it. There's a big difference, though.
Yeah,
Not
I just wonder how much of it is a difference between religion and I guess I see Clinton more as partisanship and accepting that, whereas what's going on with Trump is religion, and they're similar but not the same.
Yes, I agree with that, and I don't know how to apportion it, but I do think there is a one really big difference, other than the magnitude of the wrongdoing and evil of the two, which is, I'm not a fan of Bill Clinton, have never been, at least not since
But
1992.
he's no Trump.
But he is not. He's playing in a different ballpark of malevolence and human wreckage and political wreckage. So I don't want to equate him with Trump. But there's another difference, which is that there is a difference between the Clinton is the lesser of evils, and therefore we must support him against the greater of evils. But to do that with discomfort is very different from confusing yourself about whether it is evil at all. And the part of what is so upsetting about the right's embrace of Trump is the conflation of, okay, rightly or wrongly, I will defend him because I hate the other side more, with this is good. And I feel like nobody on the left did the equivalent of of saying, killing 600,000 kids in Africa is good. Nobody did, and there are the things that politics backs you into that are distasteful and uncomfortable. And Lord knows I have spent time in those waters, and I'm not even ashamed of that there are things that you end up having to support, not because they're good and you support them uncomfortably, but because the alternatives are worse. The inability to acknowledge that that's what you're doing strikes me as a very, very important difference between, Gloria Steinem did not say Bill Clinton should be allowed to maul Kathleen Willey, have sex with the interns, and fuck that woman Juanita Broderick, right? That's not what she said. What she said was that we got to support this guy because the cause of feminism is more threatened by the other side than by him. Well, that's a cost-benefit analysis, and I think she got it wrong. I think she's accountable for the shitty things she said at that time, but it's not an easy question, and it's not an easy question for a contemporary conservative, I suppose, or apparently isn't, it should be, whether the magnitude of the evil that the left would do is greater than the magnitude of the evil. Like, if that's the question you're struggling with, look us in the eye and tell us that's the question you're struggling with. But the translation of that into he is embodying certain virtues is a category difference, I think, with what happened during the Clinton era.
Yeah. Again, though, I don't think I wonder about the phrase embodying certain virtues. There are virtues to his policies, I think is what they're saying. Let me go back a minute. When he was elected in 2016, at some point I happened to be in Michigan at my granddaughter's kindergarten one of their schools' kindergarten graduation things.
And we
And
do
there
have to
was,
wrap, so
okay,
I'm gonna
there
ask you
was
to
this
hurry
woman
along.
who talked about not particularly liking, she referred to Trump's win as a miracle because it would result in Roe v. Wade. And that's all I was about to say. I just was taking too long to get to it.
Yeah, so look, I agree. That is the underlying psychology of it. The underlying psychology of it is the other side is so awful, and that I choose to see the hand of providence in this awful man being in power. And but the line between that and seeing the awful things he does as virtues and as goods, including up to and including killing 600,000
Yes.
kids, is that does not cause discomfort, strikes me as a deep, deep pathology. And with that, we are going to wrap. We'll be back
Thank you.
tomorrow with Stephen Marsh and his new book. I will not have to guilt any co-hosts into showing up. You are all great Americans and great Australians and great Finns and Israelis and wherever you're joining from, and we will see you tomorrow.